Hey, y'all, welcome back to a Tuesday, October 8th, 2024 edition here on the Chase Thomas podcast from Still. The aforementioned Chase Thomas coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. We've got a jam-packed show for you guys today. Each and every Tuesday on this very program, you know, it's the Tennessee Vols Sports Guys with Ryan Schumpert of Rocky Top Insider, Jack Foster of Rocky Top Insider and Omar Productions, but no Jack this week, and also Ethan Stone of Saturday Down South to talk all things Tennessee Vols every single Tuesday here on the Chase Thomas podcast. So you guessed it. We talk all things Tennessee Vols on today's show. We talk about what happened ultimately to the Vols in Fayetteville against the Arkansas Razorbacks. Full deep dive and all the issues coming out of that game, what happened, do-overs, and just so many different layers to parse through what happened in Tennessee's first loss to fall to 4-1 on the young season. We talk about why Florida is now a must-win game for Heupel and probably the biggest game for Josh Heupel in his Tennessee career thus far. We talk about the offensive line and just how big of a problem it is this season and the rest of the way. Can it get fixed here in the middle part of the season? If all fans are right to be extremely concerned about where things are headed offensively with Nico and Heupel and the staff and everything else. So we dive into Vol fan worry after the first loss of the season. So all that and more coming up next here on today's edition of the Chase Thomas podcast. Don't forget, folks, if you are a first-time watcher here on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Great to have you guys. This is a daily Tennessee Vols show here on the Chase Thomas podcast. So if you love Tennessee Vols coverage daily with all the big-name guests all across Tennessee Vols sports, make sure you're subscribed to this very channel as we continue growing this thing out. Well over 2,000 subs and growing more and more each day, full episodes, clips, shorts, all that good stuff. So make sure you subscribe, like this video, comment below what you think of this episode, and I hope you come back for future episodes as well. All right, Uncle Darren, let's go.
The Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast from Still. The aforementioned Chase Thomas coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me over there from Rocky Top Insider, Ryan Schumpert. Ryan, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. You're excited to be back on. Should be a fun pod.
Absolutely. No Jack this week. We'll get Jack back next week as well. Ethan Stone of Saturday Down South also here. Ethan, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm also doing very well. Just had a shift today. Finished up, ready to talk some Vols.
How's the new cat?
Awesome. He is. He's a little furball. He's getting a little annoying when I have to work. When I'm like on a shift. Because like I have 3 animals at home that I'm pretty much just juggling. And he can get a little annoying. He wants to be right here on the laptop when I'm working. So sometimes I have to put him up for a little bit. But yeah, he's a little bundle of joy. I love that little guy.
There you go. Ryan, are you an animal person? I feel like you've never brought it up, and like you haven't. Are you an animal guy? Did you grow up with animals?
Yeah, we had a dog growing up, small dog, and then I like temporarily, and it wasn't even really my cat. Person I was living with like had a cat. Like for a short stretch of time, couple months. I like the cat. I mean, I'm an animal person, just not to the extent of wanting to logistically figure out how to have an animal while being a single guy and traveling a lot.
Yeah, that would be tough.
Well, well, would you get a dog or a cat if you could?
I mean, if it was no issues attached, I would be a dog. But if I were to get like an animal right now, it'd be a cat because it's just so much easier.
Yeah.
The dog part was fun. My dog, Khaleesi the dog, is in here right now. And we'll get into some Tennessee Vols, but it's kind of funny. She's obviously she's a female, and she doesn't like other female dogs. She just doesn't care. It's not like she's mean to them. It's like they're not even there. She met a brother and sister this morning at the park. Couldn't care less. All in on the brother. All in. So the female dog or the sister comes over and I'm petting her and I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. She's not gonna play it. Like it's not happening. She's not interested. But that's just how it is. The weather kind of turning a little bit. That's nice. Yeah. The first fall day here in East Tennessee and forever. So that's a nice development because it's been hot and it is almost mid-October. So I am very excited for that. What I'm not excited for is to really re-examine what happened 48 hours ago in Fayetteville. Ryan Schumpert, will start on your end. The most important development for Tennessee in this game coming out of it for you is what?
I think it's just that any concern, worry we had about the passing offense, we saw the bad side of it. That Tennessee hadn't really been forced to throw the ball. We talked about that a lot. Obviously, everybody had talked about that. We were curious what it looks like if they have to. Offensive tackle was healthy, very bad in pass protection. Offensive line was very bad. Receivers, something I've been talking about since late last year, the passing game was, while Joe Milton wasn't great, he was not the only issue with it, and they had a lot of okay at receiver and not a whole lot of good. We saw that. No one out there that could get separation. So it's just everything with the passing game being bad. Obviously, Nico didn't have a good game either, not to completely take any blame away from him either. And Heupel didn't put the offense in a good spot at all. But I think it's got to be just how bad the passing offense is. And while none of the things, we knew a lot of those things were possible with pass protection, with the receivers, they were all just they were bad to the nth degree in that game.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, Ethan, is that kind of where you're going, or did you see some other stuff too that kind of stands out on your end watching this game on Saturday?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I'll even add on top of what Ryan said. When stuff is working, when stuff is gelling, the beginning of the third quarter, for example, had a very, very good drive to go down. The third quarter in general, offense played very well. I thought the plan out of halftime was very nice. When they can't get in a groove because of penalties specifically, I mean, legal man downfield, you got a holding, you got hands to the face. I mean, it was just constant. You'd get in a bit of a groove. Nico, your red shirt freshman quarterback, who obviously he's not a normal red shirt freshman, but the fact that Heupel seems to be, and I think I said this to you guys, that he almost seems to have just left the training wheels on for Nico. And when you add that to the fact that the pass protection has been terrible, the receivers have been less than optimal, you're on the road where Nico is very obviously very nervous for what's happening, especially on the last drive, and we'll get into that a lot later. But there's just the run game was good. I mean, they averaged 4.8 yards per carry. Even without the big long run from Sampson, they were probably averaging about 4 yards per carry. You can't get into any sort of groove, exactly like Ryan said, with the passing offense. It's just non-existent. There's no threat there. If you get a defense of any substance, I don't see how they don't just hone in on the run and just go to town on you.
It's funny. You bring up the third quarter, and when they went up at 14-3, I thought it was over because Tennessee is just so good. Like, the defense was great. Again, I mean, they gave up a touchdown late, but that was because they were trying to get the ball back. The defense, there was a lot of bending this week, more so than we've seen at any point this year, but there wasn't any breaking. And I just thought, like, the touchdowns weren't coming for Arkansas. So when you get a double-digit lead with this defense, even on the road, I just looked at this, and I looked at coming out of the half where Arkansas only coming out of the first half with 3 points, and Sam had been saying I'd rather be us than them or whatever it was. I was like, what are we talking about right now? Because I think that's a disaster if you're an Arkansas fan. I think it's a disaster if you look at this. You're at home, you're double-digit, like your 2 touchdown dogs at home, and you have this big long drive. You kick a field goal on the 2-yard line, whatever it was. You have multiple turnover on downs because Tennessee has some humongous stops. Like, the defense comes through in a major way, and I just thought it was going to go the Oklahoma game. Like, I just thought Tennessee was going to run through Dylan Sampson catching fire in the third quarter. I thought we would start maybe to see more Deshaun Bishop. It just felt like Tennessee was going to be able to put together enough first downs on the ground because I didn't think the passing game was there, but I also just didn't think it would matter. I really didn't. And I still, 48 hours later, am really stunned because, like, the difference, if you're an Alabama fan and you saw what happened to your team against Vanderbilt, the difference in that one, Diego Pavia is legitimately good. Diego Pavia diced up that Alabama defense. That Alabama didn't play great. They didn't play horrible, but Vanderbilt actually played well. Like, Vanderbilt is a good team. Like, Vanderbilt has improved in a significant way this year. That offense is legitimately good. I did not come out of this game going, Arkansas, man. They're on the rise. Like, they figured some stuff out. I don't think that's how, like, Taylor Green had some chunk plays. Arkansas got to, but it wasn't like it felt like they were overwhelming Tennessee. It didn't feel like that's one of those games where I understand, like, a lot of top teams went down. What frustrates me so much about this game is that Tennessee, I think, wins this game so often, and because of where they're at defensively, the defense has raised the floor so much of what this Tennessee team is, that the offense did not have to do much at all. They had to do, I mean, honestly, less than what they had to do 2 weeks ago against Oklahoma. I thought Oklahoma was actually doing more with their backup quarterback and showing more fight late than what this Arkansas front was doing. I couldn't believe that. There. Well, I also disagree. Well, I think what also just blew my mind was that Braylon Russell was able to gash this defense on that final drive twice and set them up to potentially have a game-winning field goal or whatever. I didn't have that in my, like, that was a possibility. I was blown away by that. So I think when you ask so much of your defense, like, you're just kind of surprised when they do bend a little bit now at this point because they have been so good. But I thought 14-3 with where Tennessee was at as a program, even with the issues offensively, I thought that was more than enough. And I think it's just pretty discouraging that you blew a very winnable game, another great performance, even with the chunk plays the defense gave up, because the offense couldn't do anything. You just needed a couple first downs. You just needed to not run into the kicker. You needed to do just a couple things. I think Bama was in a lot of trouble for a lot of different reasons. Like, Vanderbilt was putting it on them. Like, it didn't feel like that in Arkansas. It just felt like Tennessee could not get out of their own way and just do the little things right to take care of business. And I don't know. I'm still frustrated by it because it felt like a true upset in that way. And it felt like I don't know, Ryan, you and I and Ethan, we were talking about this in the group chat of, like, if this was the worst loss in South Carolina in 2022, the stakes were different. Obviously, in the 2 years, there was the actual final score was different, where the defenses were at. This one just annoys me a lot more because I think Tennessee was still ahead of schedule. You lose to Hooker, like, Jeremy Banks doesn't play in that game. The defense, like, I understand, like, it was crazy, but that South Carolina team also blitzed Clemson the week after. They had a great finishing run to their season. Spencer Rattler was on fire. Taylor Green was not on fire in this game. It wasn't like he was okay. It wasn't like they were good. He was okay. I wouldn't even say he was good. I think he was fine. He just didn't turn the ball over, and he
made a couple very, very nice throws, and
it was okay. But I was
he
not.
exposed some issues in the passing game,
right? But you didn't come away from that game like Taylor Green. Like, he's a dude. He's fine. Like, he was okay. I don't know. I just did not.
He was better than okay. He made two very, very nice throws, deep throws on the one touchdown drive before the final drive of the game, and then to take advantage of the roughing the punter. And he made the throws over the middle that were there too.
I don't know. Ethan, do you think it was more frustrating or a worse loss than South Carolina? I mean, maybe Florida too last year. Was Florida worse than what you saw this year? I don't know, because you can explain Florida, the Cooper Mace thing. Like, you can explain Florida to me a lot more than you can explain this one. I think
I don't think it was as bad as South Carolina. It also was just an entirely different game, entirely different problems in an entirely different situation. I don't think I can quite put it at that level yet. Now, what is very concerning is the fact that happened in year 2 and this happened in year 4. And, we're moving forward into the Florida game. And I think we're going to talk about this in a little bit. If you lay an egg against Florida, there's a lot of people whose opinion of Heupel is going to be just completely ruined. I mean, there's some after this one, but you lose to Florida at home, it's over. I mean, you're going to lose a lot of people there. And that's concerning. For you to lay an egg where your calling card is supposed to be your passing offense and it's variable and just everything it does to defenses at the college level, that's a problem. When it's not working like this, when you've got the highly touted quarterback coming out of high school that everyone was promised was going to be perfect, and he's not so perfect as a redshirt freshman. Imagine that.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Red.
A weird dichotomy, kind of going back to your point, Chase. And then I have a greater point to kind of what Ethan just said too. I think there's a weird feel of this game in that Arkansas was like, it didn't feel like an upset in a sense that Arkansas, to me, was the better team basically the entire game. I mean, outside of the first 3 drives of the third quarter, I mean, they outgained Tennessee. They moved the ball through the air better. They didn't move the ball through the ground quite as well, but pretty similarly. But to your point, Tennessee's up 14-3 in the third quarter, despite not playing, being worse. It's like, yeah, you have to win this game. You have to put it to bed. And I think you made the point about just needing to get some first downs offensively, and I'll continue to beat this over the head. But to me, the sequence no one will talk about in this game that is absolutely criminal and how Tennessee lost is with 4:10 roughly left on the clock. Arkansas punts the ball from their own 14-yard line. Squirrel White does not catch the punt. A short punt would have been Tennessee's ball at the 40-yard line. He doesn't catch it. It rolls 20 yards. They go 3 and out. 40 seconds go off the clock. Punt it back. Arkansas gets the ball at their own 41-yard line. It gains whatever that is, like 27 yards in 40 seconds because Tennessee didn't catch a punt and they can't do anything on offense. And at this point in the game, I kept on thinking, because Arkansas threw the ball well when Taylor Green was in, I didn't know why they kept on running it. With the backup quarterback, Singleton, I think. Sorry, just bad.
Malachi Singleton, yeah.
Malachi Singleton. He couldn't do anything passing. And I was like, Tennessee's going to be able to survive here if they can just play field position and make Arkansas drive 50 yards and then make a field goal with a really shaky field goal kicking situation. Like, they're going to be fine. But they don't catch a punt. They go 3 and out in 30 seconds. You let them hit one screen pass for 10 yards. And like you said, the defense gives in for 2 plays on the ground of like 3-4 plays the entire game, and you lose the game. That's just where the bad football was just mainly from
it's just
Tennessee's
maddening.
Offense, but also the
like this is a
special teams.
maddening
That's
loss.
part-
I was just
that's the
I was
maddening
just
part
so
of it.
mad. Like, this is so dumb. You were so close to getting out of this. Like, you were just
Yeah.
even as awful as you played, you're just a
Unacceptable
couple
in year
things,
4.
like you said, right? The punt return, the squirrel, and then the punt block, like special teams being a disaster. Maybe kicking the field goal, trying it with Max Gilbert at the end. Like, I still don't really understand why you didn't at least try it, or even throw out Turbeville, who has a stronger leg. Maybe, like, at least try something. That blew my mind that you don't try that. You have multiple chances, like letting the clock run down, like you burn 12, 13 seconds. After that, like, if you just do not all of them correctly, you just do 2 more of those incorrectly, I think you're in really good shape to still win this game. I don't know. This one's just going to drive me nuts for a while. Like, especially, I guess it will depend on how the rest of the season goes, Ethan. But to me, even on your worst day, in so many ways, you just still couldn't close. Like, Cal, I mean, obviously Cal is a little bit different than Arkansas, but not that much. And Cal also went into Auburn and won, and Miami comes all the way back. They have their D game in a lot of ways. Cam Ward has one of the all-time worst picks you'll ever see a quarterback throw, but he still came back. And I understand Cam's significantly older and been around college football over. But the point is, you're right there. You have the same close to the same talent as Miami. You're on the road, but good teams, you find a way, even when you have those stink bombs, and it's one a year. These stink bombs, we just cannot avoid it. And I don't know. It's just very frustrating. This was the most frustrating loss in a long time. I think this was definitely more frustrating than last year's Florida game. And I think the South Carolina one, always going to be complicated.
Yeah, I'd still hold that South Carolina was the worst one. That most frustrating anyway. This is a very close second place. I've beat this dead horse, but because it's year 4, I don't think we've talked about the fact that it's out of a bye week. I mean, how is the team that unprepared out of a bye, especially when they've already played a hostile environment this year? It's not like you can have that excuse that it's their first time playing a physical defense in a hostile environment. It's not. It was Lance Hurds, maybe. That's it. Like, he's the only guy that gets anything is Lance Hurd, and even that wasn't an acceptable performance. Even if the guy's injured. I mean, I'm right there with you. It's one of them that makes you just want to turn football off and just kind of stare at the stars.
It's one that you want to go up and take a walk where you're like,
exactly.
I felt like Ben Affleck in my meme. I share a lot of Ben Affleck smoking a cigarette with his Photoshop Tennessee sweater on. That is what that game was me going outside and pulling a Ben Affleck. But was the fan response though? Because Saturday night was, and listen to Tony Basilio's fifth quarter calls, and looking at the VolQuest message boards, and just reading the tea leaves on Twitter and all kinds of different social media. The fan response was all over the place here, but there was a lot of panic. There was a lot of frustration for Tennessee fans. Some were like, look, or a little bit more reasonable than others. But do you think, Ryan, the fan response was justified, or do you think it was more overblown to the loss and just how Tennessee lost this football game?
Yeah, I mean, that's hard for me to say because I didn't consume a lot of that media, I guess, or see, all of it outside of just what I saw on Twitter. I mean, I think I'm sure a lot of it was overblown. You lose a game you shouldn't in college football. That's just going to happen. But I think some of it's fair too. I think the thought that, Josh Heupel was a top 15, top 20 coach in a sport, but isn't going to be a top 5 coach. I think that's kind of fair at this point. I mean, till he's lost one of these games every single year, it can't keep happening. And one thing I'll say on the offense, which I think that's a big part of it too, to where kind of to your point, Chase, of how maddening it was. South Carolina, at least as a defense, that defense was bad all year. Josh Heupel, the offense is his baby, as we've talked about many times. The offense still played well in that game. The offense was terrible, and the offense for most of the season has not been particularly good. And I think that causes a lot of frustration with Heupel being an offensive guy. And kind of just to make a point about the offense as a whole and not maybe get us too far off the rails of the actual question. I just don't feel they don't have any identity on offense right now.
Yeah.
None whatsoever. And I was talking about this with a friend today. And so shout out to him. We were bouncing ideas off each other, and I thought he said some things that were smart. They're not playing fast right now. And some of it this year, they've done it on, they ran a lot of 12 personnel against NC State, so that maybe lended to them not playing quite as fast against Oklahoma. Obviously, they didn't go fast on purpose. And then obviously against Arkansas, they struggled to get first downs. And I'll add one more thing here. People always talk about you got to get that first down. I think the bigger thing with the tempo is to get a first down on first or second down, or at least get it to third and short to where you're going to get up and you're going to run it. When they get in the third down, that's when they check a lot, and that's when it slows down. But Heupel's offense, and we've talked about it for years, the route trees, the route system, all the criticisms of it, it's very basic. And you can get away with doing basic when you either, one, have really good players, or two, you're going fast and it's hard for people to keep up. Well, when you're playing slow and you got a bunch of mid receivers, the basic route trees aren't going to work. And that's what you're seeing right now, I think, is that it's a lot of very basic repetition that they're running, and they're not playing fast. The defenses are never on their heels, and they have a bunch of average receivers. So I don't think they're catching a lot of people off guard. And it just feels like between the 12 personnel, between the inability to play fast, this offense has no identity and has no idea what it wants to be. And I'm not really sure how they get that back.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think in terms of the fan reaction, Ethan, the one thing that I do think is reasonable is, and this kind of speaks to what Ryan's saying, I think being this surprised, like where Dylan Sampson talked about, like being surprised that they threw a 3-3-5 at Tennessee in this game. I think based on what you've seen from the first, you should expect that teams have seen on tape. They're seeing the tape. There's now 4 years of Tennessee tape, offensive tape, that they're going to try and find ways to limit what Tennessee's doing. The big play has not been there outside of the FCS games, which we might as well just toss out. I don't even know, should we cover them anymore? It feels like the Tuesday midweek game now in baseball, Ryan, where it's just you learn nothing. Ole Miss and Tennessee and just you're not learning anything about where this offense is at all with those games.
Auburn beat Alabama A&M 73-3.
Yeah,
what does that do for you?
You're not learning anything. You're not learning anything at all about what this team's actually capable of and where they're at offensively. But I think it is not an overreaction to be extremely concerned about how much better the offense can realistically get in the middle of the season at this point, where there's so much on tape now that if you're a Tennessee fan, you're worried. You're like, I don't think a top 10 scoring offense is coming because of where we're at. Then I think it's fair. I don't think that's an overreaction to be like, I think we have to recalibrate this offensive ceiling this year, because I think a lot of people were like, it could be 2022 again, pretty close. And I don't think that's coming. I think there are real problems here. We'll see what happens with the receivers, who's playing on Saturday, how much people are out. We'll see what the health of the offensive line looks like the rest of the season, if they're changed. I just don't think it's an overreaction, Ethan, if you're a fan right now and you look at this offense and you've looked the last 2 weeks, that you say, this offense, I just don't think is going to be one of the best in the SEC. It's just, I don't think it's coming.
No, I don't think that's an overreaction at all. And for the most part, I saw some of the reaction. I as I alluded to earlier, decided to turn football off and go look at the stars instead of reading Twitter replies and Reddit replies. But the bits that I did see, I thought it was very fair. I mean, there aren't people calling for Heupel to be fired. There aren't people, for the most part, calling for Nico to be benched or anything like that. And like there's been a fair reaction. The offensive thing that you just mentioned, Chase, when you don't have a receiver that's separating, when your pass protection, your running backs in pass protection, none of them are working. When none of them are doing anything. When Nico is struggling more so than you would think that he's going to struggle, when he's struggling to get through his reads, when he's not running the ball. I don't know if that's Heupel wanting to protect him or what, but he's shown that he has mobility, and they're not running him like Hendon Hooker, like Milton. Like that's part of the offense too, is the speed and the being able to use his legs, and he's just as good. He's just as good as any of them, and they refuse to let him run the ball. They refuse to let him do really much of anything other than the wide split bubble screens and every once in a while a slant, and it's just not going to work. You're not going to get anywhere going like this. And folks, we haven't even played a top 40 defense yet. Not really. You look at the total defense numbers, Oklahoma and Arkansas are right there, but it's no Georgia. It's no Alabama. It's really no Kentucky even.
And it's also like, right, the problem is like there are multiple problems. Does that make sense on the offense?
Yeah.
Where the problem is that there are multiple problems. Is that if it was just one thing, I could say, then I think they could get there. I think as the season goes on, they can grow. Yep. I think there are problems at quarterback. Not saying that Nico can't eventually get there, but I don't know when. He's 6 starts in. It's hard. Being a quarterback in the SEC is hard. You're going into a tougher portion of your schedule now. It's going to get hard. And I think Nico is still growing and going through growing pains. That's one thing. The offensive line, that also needs to get significantly better in pass protection. That's another thing. The running backs have to get better in pass protection. That's another thing. The wide receivers have to separate better. That's another thing. Ethan Davis has to see the field, maybe. That's another thing.
As well, I mean, down the field.
I love that Brent Hubbs threw out on the Rocky Top Rewind of like maybe potentially putting him out wide and just like do 3 tight end sets basically, because if that's his skill set, because he's so big and just kind of more of that hybrid Kyle Pitts type anyway, then maybe you do find a way to put him out wide. And I don't know, but I think, Ryan, that's my bigger thing is this. It's not one thing. And any fan who's trying to pinpoint, like, it's just Golish, he's gone, or it's just Nico, or it's Heupel, or it's Halsley. Like, it's not. There's just multiple things going on. And I think it's hard for us on the outside to really decipher what how to rate in terms of what's been the biggest problems for this offense. I just know that there are multiple problems, and there are so many right now that I think some will get cleaned up as the season goes on, but I don't see a situation where they're all cleaned up and this offense is firing on all cylinders like a top 5 scoring offense in the country. I think that's asking too much at this point.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that's very accurate. I'd say, I think personally, most of it boils down to offensive tackle play and the receivers. I think those are the biggest issues. Not that Nico has been great by any means, but I feel confident if protection was good and guys were open, he'd be playing pretty well.
Yeah.
The narrative would not be changing a whole lot if the things around him were what we thought they were going to be in week 1.
Which is important for a young quarterback. You see in the NFL,
exactly.
The best quarterbacks, they start off in great situations. That's why the rookie contract for quarterbacks is so important, because you can surround them in their most formidable years with a bunch of talent.
Yep.
Like, you want to get DJ Moore for Caleb Williams. You want to have a lot of dudes around these guys. Like the Titans loaded up in a lot of ways. Like, you want to, it hasn't gone the way it was, but like the point is that's what you do.
Yes.
You make life as easy as humanly possible for your new young franchise quarterback. And it just has not been easy around Nico, which makes it hard.
Yeah. And Nico, to me, like, and again, maybe he'll play every game like he did the Arkansas game, because the Arkansas game he was bad. But for the most part, from what I've seen from Nico and what I think, it's just he's not good enough right now to carry a lot of average around him. I think if things were good around him, he'd be good. And there's no shame in that. It's his first year as a starter. He's a redshirt freshman. So to me, that's where I fall with Nico. Certainly he needs to cut some of the mistakes that he has made and made in the Arkansas game. And look, I think he needs to let it rip more some and tight coverage and man on man. Like your guys, Brew McCoy, Chris Brazell, they're not fast. They're not going to start getting a lot of separation, but they are 6'3", 6'4" strong. See if they can make some contested catches. I do think he needs a little bit of that. I think to me, being there in person, I thought he was a little bit gun shy at times on Saturday. But at the same time, again, I'm not sitting there, and obviously I could be missing stuff on plays, but sitting there at all 22, I don't see a lot of plays where he's just not seeing open guys and not letting it rip, which was the case at times last season.
Yeah. Ethan, is Florida on Saturday the biggest game in Josh Heupel's tenure at Tennessee?
When I first saw this question, I was like, I really don't think so. About it more, I absolutely understand that take. I mean, a lot's on the line for him. Like it's like I said earlier, not everybody is out on Heupel yet. Most people, I feel like, are not out on Heupel yet. There are going to be a lot of people out on Heupel if he loses at home to Florida in year 4. This specific Florida team, they're not good on defense. They've gotten better. They played well against UCF. Flagway is probably a better option than Mertz is. They have potential to have chunk plays on offense. I think they could test the defense a little bit. There's just nothing there that Florida team should be able to outplay what Arkansas did, outplay what Oklahoma did, what all other Tennessee opponents have been able to do. And not to mention, I feel like a pretty decent amount of Nico and therefore kind of the offense, but like we've already discussed, the issues are multifaceted. I feel like a part of it is being on the road. I mean, he's still young. He still has just not faced that much adversity on the road before. You're coming home, you got the guys on your side, and sure, a big matchup where there's going to be nerves, and obviously Florida's history with Tennessee is less than ideal in this situation, so you're always going to be a little nervous going into it. I'm at the point where, like, yeah, I'm wary, but you got to go win this game. And Tennessee at this point, despite us being very disappointed and despite, the offensive woes, the obvious glaring problems with this offense, I'm not sure I'm ready to say that they're going to fall far enough where Florida's, going to trounce them or really even compete with them. I think this should be a fairly, I don't want to say easy, but comfortable game for Tennessee because Florida's just not good. They're just not good.
Well, Ryan, I think you just can't lose it because you're not beating Alabama if you lose this game, and then you're at a 3-game losing streak. You lose your first 2 key home games. We've seen what the response was after this game. You drop Florida in that building at night, and then 3:30 you drop Bama. It's just that kind of 3-game. We've seen it before with these guys like that. Things can get ugly in a hurry. Things can get dicey in a hurry this season. That is not where you want to be. And I think this is the most critical must-win game of the Heupel tenure. I just can't escape that. Like, he has to win this game. He has to calm the storm like that. He doesn't have to beat Florida and Bama to right the ship. I do think he has to beat Florida. I don't think there's any way around it. Like, this is the game you go all out doing whatever it takes. Like, run Nico 20 times. You've got to do whatever possible to win this game. You cannot lose this game at home. Like, you just can't in the Heupel. Like, I can't emphasize that enough. I don't know if you agree, but you can't.
I completely agree. Yeah, no, I completely agree, and that was going to be my entire answer to your question of this is the most important game. To me, with these questions like this at times, because there's 2, different realms. There's like the biggest game, the biggest matchup, and the other realm is kind of goes to this: is games you can't lose. Mm. And to me, it's just hard. There's just games you can't lose. It's hard to rank.
Yeah.
Tennessee couldn't lose to UTC to open the year. So in that sense, that game is just as important as this game. There's just games you cannot lose, and this is a game you cannot lose for Tennessee. So yeah, from that aspect, it's certainly right up there. And you're right, with it being at home, the 2 straight losses with Bama looming, and the fact that at that point you lose those 2 games, you're 4-3 in the middle of the season with a lot of season out ahead of you. It has a chance to spiral.
Still Georgia.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, no, I think all that thought's fair. To Florida, I mean, it's Monday, and I've already gone a million different directions on how I think this game's going to go. But the one thing I will just say is and this is a thought with the offense as well. I'm just a big believer it's never as good as it looks or it's never as bad as it looks. I feel confident they won't look that bad again. Getting back at home, and the Lord knows good news for Tennessee is Florida can't stop the run, so they should be able to have that, as a safety blanket in this game. But I do think the offense will look a good bit better in this game. But certainly for the first time in a while, it's like a game where I'm like, Tennessee has to start fast. Cannot have bad energy in the crowd. Cannot have more reasons for lack of confidence offensively. You typically say that when you're an underdog or you don't necessarily like where you are, that you need to start fast. I haven't felt like I've said that about Tennessee in a while. I guess, outside like the Georgia game last year, this is a game where I really feel like they need to start quick.
Stock up. Is there any stock up you saw from Saturday, Ethan Stone, for Tennessee?
I mean, on the defensive side, I thought there were several. None major, probably, but I liked what I saw from Jeremiah Thielander. I liked what I saw from Jacoby Thomas. I liked what I saw from Arian Carter. All three of them played good games. I think Carter missed like a tackle. I remember to stop someone for a first down. Maybe I don't know.
He busted coverage on the 3rd and 15 at the 1 yard.
You're right.
That's the play I think you're thinking of.
That's exactly what it was. There was one of them I was like, ooh, that was really rough. But otherwise, he had a pretty solid game. Thielander, I thought, was really excellent in the limited snaps that he played. I can't remember what the PFF thing was. I think it was like 20, 22, something like that, snaps. He looked really good on most of them. Jacoby Thomas, man, he can hit. He is a great open field tackler, and he's far exceeded what I thought he was going to be this season. I don't think I'm ready to say he's the best player in the secondary. I think that goes to Jermon McCoy, but he's been much, much better than anticipated. Offense, man, I don't think I have a single one. I genuinely I thought about it.
I'm throwing Cooper in. Cooper was good in this game. Cooper was really good. Cooper's good in those games.
I don't think Carrots was awful. He had the illegal man down the field that he loves doing. It's his favorite thing in the world is running down the field when Nico's surveying. But he was okay, I guess. And Mays was great, but it's hard to find anyone else. It's hard to find anyone that it's like, yeah, that was great after that loss.
On offense, the one I circle, it's Cooper. I mean, I don't know anywhere else. Dylan Sampson. We should throw Dylan Sampson in. Yeah, I think Dylan had a good third.
But those are guys that's
this is already up.
The stock's already really high. They just played how you really good players, how you would expect them to play. They weren't the problem.
What about you, Ryan? Stock up and stock down.
Stock up was a hard one to find. I thought James Pierce played to what we expected for the first time all season. I thought he created a lot of havoc.
Got held a lot. You can call holding on just about every James Pierce pass rush. He is that right tackle was on an island so much, and there were some just right in the face where Dominic Bailey got one and James Pierce. Where I'm like, what are we doing? At what point do we There's got to be some. One.
Yeah. And the other one I'll say, the red zone offense had kind of been a weakness. They scored touchdowns the 2 times they were down there. They did it just by running, so it didn't necessarily answer my questions about because the red zone offense questions is when you can't line it up and just run it. How are you right up the middle? How are you going to score? Stock down. We've talked about a lot of it. Receivers, special teams. Those 2 plays on punt returns were just so costly.
I didn't think I guess they missed D. Williams. I didn't know they missed D. Williams this much. The D. Williams absence has been huge for Tennessee.
Yeah. No, it has. All right, verbal meme. Tired. Tennessee hasn't recruited out of high school and developed a single offensive tackle that's playing. Wired. Tennessee has not recruited out of high school and recruited a single good receiver. Which I will say, credit to Chase Thomas. He's been on it since day one on Squirrel White, not being a big Squirrel White believer. I think he's a fine player. Not that I thought he was a number 1 guy, but I thought he had this different juice. It just clearly not happened this season. He would be the one guy
downfield threat than he is.
Well, I don't even hold on, Ryan. I knew he was going to throw the squirrel thing out there, and
I was giving you credit.
Well, hold on. Let me preface this. Squirrel is fine, and my whole thing is Squirrel is fine. He is a fine slot player. But the problem is they need an A+ slot player in this offense. You can just tell when the post Jalen Hyatt year, and then even Velus Jones. I think was like just because he was more versatile and he did a lot more for Tennessee in the slot in year one. I think that position is so important in this offense that a B slot guy stands out significantly. And Tennessee that's why Dante Thornton got the shot there last year. That's why you bring in Dante Thornton, is to kind of get that vertical speedster in that slot, because it is a mismatch for Tennessee. You hope it's Braylon Staley next year, the 4-star out of South Carolina. Maybe it's Mike Matthews down the stretch, but he's, I think, still should probably be an outside guy, maybe just to get him in there. He's a slot guy this year, but I don't know. To me, it kind of feels like the offensive line recruiting, where I think there's going to be multiple starters from this class, the 24 class, coming out of it, with Satterwhite, with Warren, maybe Anderson or Ginther. I would probably say one of the two works out at guard, is my guess. I think this is the most talented offensive line group they brought in. So I still think you're going to get some there. And then on the receivers,
I don't disagree with that.
I think Matthews and Staley, like Staley I know less about, but he has more of the profile of a more upside slot guy. And I think Squirrel is fine. He's just a B. And you can't have a B there when everywhere else at receiver is a B or a C right now. So it just stands out more. And you saw what this offense was when you have an A+ slot guy. And it's really hard to replace Jalen Hyatt, but I think a lot of people just thought you were going to plug and play Hyatt to Squirrel, and they're very different players, and Squirrel is good in his own right. He's just not elite. He's not an elite, take the top off, control in an Alabama game, because he's that good and that unguardable. It's just different. Like, there's just a different ceiling.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to get, where I was getting to with the point of it's not as bad because, and I kind of phrased it this way, the offensive line, like, no one's playable that they've recruited and developed. You have plenty of guys that are playable at receiver.
Yeah.
You just don't have anybody that's a difference maker. And that, is to me a big disappointment in year 4.
I'm still going to hold out. I like Satterwhite a lot. I like Warren a lot.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying any of that stuff isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Don't put that on me.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, to this point, you're right. I just would probably. Yes, I agree. I am running with optimism with the wide receiver and offensive line class that just came in. I'm optimistic about it.
I am optimistic as well, especially the offensive line, and I think Mag Matthews will definitely be a player. Braylon Staley to me is just more of a question.
We'll
mark.
See. Yeah. Final thing here, and we'll get out of here. The worry meter for the offensive line out of 10 here, Ethan. Because I think a lot of the worry before this week was health, because you attributed the offensive line issues against Oklahoma because you were like, okay, we had to play a lot of Larry, but Larry actually played really well, and Dane Davis had to play a lot. This game, Lance Hurd and John Campbell played a bunch of snaps. Campbell played the most snaps of the season, and the tackles were the worst graded offensive linemen in the game for Tennessee. So it's not injuries, and it's not just having those two guys in the fold for Tennessee's offensive line. Like, your worry meter out of 10 here for this offensive line, because now we've seen both sides, where I don't have an answer. I'm not an offensive line guru. All I know is Nico Iamaleava has been sacked 8 times in the last 2 weeks. He's been under duress nearly half of his dropbacks to this point in the last 2 weeks. I don't know. Like, it goes back to our honestly, the broadest point of this podcast, which is, I don't know what the ceiling can ultimately be with this team. It cannot be that high if this is the offensive line that in pass pro that Tennessee is going to be rolling out each week against better and better competition, because it's just not good.
Definitely not if the receivers can't get open, as we've definitely covered so far. My worry meter is probably at like an 8.5. I mean, I almost want it to be higher, man. Like, yeah. It's terrifying. I will say, I don't want this to come off the wrong way, or like I'm trying to sugarcoat it, but like Lance Hurd, I said it earlier, and I think I'll stand by it. He played okay at the start of the year. He was hurt. He's playing a physical defense in a road environment that he just has not faced this season. He has not faced in this system. I'm not going to say that he's going to be an A+, if he's going to be an A+ offensive lineman, but I do think he can get better. I think we've seen what we can see from John Campbell. and even heard, I mean, he had some questionable reps. I know you guys saw him playing patty cake on the last drive. I know you guys saw that. That worries me. The interior offensive line, honestly, pass protection wise, worries me. The running backs, as I've said, pass protection wise, it worries me. 8.5, willing to go much higher.
Ryan, what about you?
8.5 was the number that came to mind. It's, and you're grading it on the can Tennessee make the college football playoff scale, and they're not beating Georgia. It's not happening.
Yeah.
I felt that even last week. I just said I don't think the receivers are good enough. Certainly seeing them struggle and the road struggles come up again, and against a worse defense and an easier place to play, it's hard to feel that way. I still think Tennessee can beat Alabama, but to beat Alabama, you're gonna have to score 30 points. As good as the defense is, maybe they can score 30. It's certainly possible, but my confidence in that is waned, and certainly the offensive tackle plays a big reason for that.
I think it depends on your expectations now, right? Like, to put a bow on it, I think if your expectation or your hope, rather, is college football playoff, the worry meter has to be 10 because a lot has to change with this offensive line to get you there. Like the offensive line has to be so much better in pass pro. And we have to probably, interesting for clarity, let's just include Bishop and Sampson also in the pass blocking. Like let's just say pass blocking as a whole, if it doesn't just greatly increase, and Nico has a lot more time and Nico gets a lot more comfortable at home, and we see a different type of thing because like they were comfortable. Like you didn't notice JJ Crawford and Gerald Mincey at left tackle against Bama and some of the other big competition at home. But part of it, to Ryan's point, is just tempo. Like you don't notice it when the offense is flowing and defenses aren't set and they're moving. You just don't notice. You notice now because Tennessee's moving at a molasses pace. They're getting a lot of penalties. So they're behind the sticks. They're in third along a lot. So that it's one of those things where it's just a lot more evident. And the only way I think to really shift the narrative is the tempo has to return. Like you have to see this offense getting early first downs, moving the ball with ease, figuring out a rhythm. Because to your point, Ryan, they don't have really an identity right now on offense. And if they don't, and they're struggling to figure out what that is, the offensive line stuff and just the pass protection stuff, I can't put it less than a 10 because I think it's the difference between Tennessee riding the ship and ultimately making the playoff at like 10-2 versus 9-3, 8-4. And also, perhaps most importantly, affecting the growth and long-term trajectory of Nico if he's playing behind one of the SEC's worst offensive lines or worst pass protection units all season long. It's just not good for a quarterback, especially a young one.
Don't worry, guys. The good interior offensive linemen are all gone next year.
I'm curious in a lot of areas, but offensive line going into next year and what that starting unit looks like for Nico's potential last year. I mean, he might be here 3 years depending on how things continue to progress and stuff, but I don't know. Yeah, that's a future problem. I'm not thinking about that right now. I'm thinking about we got a Final Four basketball run men's side, and we have a baseball repeat national title to get through. Ryan Schumpert. So let's not fast forward that far yet. There's still a lot. You were already sending out the report of how close basketball season is to being back already.
Yeah, no, I sent that to y'all, I guess. I thought about tweeting it, but that felt a little over dramatic, so I held back. But basketball season's coming. In-house media day on Thursday.
Yeah.
Less than a month away.
Yep.
Ryan Schumpert, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at Rocky Top Insider this week?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it there, in-house media day for Tennessee on Thursday. So coverage from that, another practice report. We'll have some more Tennessee baseball practice reports or, inter-squad scrimmage reports. Should have one tomorrow. They're planning on scrimmaging, or today, probably as you're listening, Tuesday. And then obviously everything on the football front. Continue to probably one more day or so putting a bow on the Arkansas game. And then plenty of stuff looking ahead to Florida this weekend and looking at the Gators. So all our normal coverage and everything you need to get you ready for Saturday.
Ethan, what about you and the team over at Saturday Down South this week?
Yeah, similar stuff. We're heading into 2 fantastic weeks of college football on October 12th and the 19th, especially the 19th. There's going to be a lot of fun matchups there. We'll have full coverage for all of it, Big Ten, ACC, and SEC schools. Keep up with the normal news coverage. We'll have columns out. I'm doing bowl projections now. I feel like we've gotten deep enough into the season where we can legitimately do that and not get laughed at. So yeah, a lot of good stuff coming.
There you go. Ryan Schumpert, Ethan Stone, always a pleasure, and I will talk to y'all next week.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.